Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. Let's get a divorce, Jason Grant said, his expression completely unmoved, as if we weren't a couple who had been married for 3 years, but two strangers with no connection whatsoever. He didn't know I had been reborn. In my previous life, I believed him. I foolishly agreed to a fake divorce because he told me it was for our daughters and my benefit, that doing so would help us qualify for a better apartment. He said it was all a strategy to protect our rights as mother and child. I trusted him, and once the apartment was secured, he held hands with his beloved Linda Snow and looked me in the eyes as he said, "We're already divorced." How ridiculous. I was the one who pulled him out from a pile of corpses. I was the one who sold my family's heirloom bracelet just to afford his medical bills. And what did I get in return? Just one cold sentence. We're already divorced. Now that I had the chance to live again, I looked at Jason's indifferent face and smiled. All right then, Jason Grant, let's get a divorce. As we walked out of the military compound side by side, Jason's strides were long and fast, with no intention of waiting for me. I carried our daughter in my arms, following behind him, feeling like an extra burden that didn't belong. The scene, the people, everything was identical to my past life. The sunlight stunned my eyes, making them ache, so I lowered my head. My daughter, warm and soft in my arms, asked in her sweet little voice, "Mommy, why is Daddy walking so fast?" I gently stroked her head and whispered, "Daddy has something important to do. Let's not bother him." Jason's footsteps paused for a moment, but he didn't look back. I knew he heard me. He just didn't care. In my last life, I followed behind him just like this, carrying our daughter, holding on to hope, thinking he was simply bad at expressing emotion. I truly believed that deep down he cared about the two of us. That illusion lasted until the day he brought that woman, Linda Snow, the sweetheart of the performance troupe, right in front of me. She leaned into his arms and with a soft, sugary voice said, "Sister-in-law. Oh, I guess I should call you comrade now. Thank you for letting Jason and me be together." Jason never once looked at me. He just said coldly, "We're already divorced. Don't come bothering me again." Bothering him. I gave him the best years of my life. I gave him every ounce of my love, and all I got in return was being labeled a nuisance. How pathetic. How tragic. But this time, I refused to be the joke of my own story. When we arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau, the clerk looked up and asked, "Are you too sure you want to get divorced?" Jason casually pulled out 2 packs of State Express cigarettes from his pocket and handed them over, replying in a familiar, easy tone, "Yes, we're divorcing voluntarily." The clerk clearly knew him. After accepting the cigarettes, they processed our paperwork without delay. The moment I held that divorce certificate in my hands, I caught the faintest smirk at the corner of Jason's lips. He thought he was free now. He thought he could finally be with his beloved Linda openly and without guilt. I smiled too. I lifted my head, meeting Jason's assessing gaze, and said slowly, "Congratulations, Commander Grant. You got exactly what you wanted." Jason froze. He probably hadn't expected me to be this calm. In the past, even the slightest coldness from him would send me crying, begging, and refusing to let go. But today I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I even smiled at him, his brow furrowed, clearly displeased. "What do you mean?" he asked. I took a step back, holding my daughter tighter, putting distance between us. "Exactly what it sounds like," I said lightly. "Commander Grant, now that we're divorced, let's each go our own way and cross our own bridges. I wish you great success in your future, and please don't ever interfere in our lives again." Without waiting for a response, I turned around and walked away with my daughter in my arms. Behind me, I heard Jason's startled voice, "Where are you going?" I didn't look back. I simply raised a hand and waved. "Somewhere without you, somewhere I can start my new life. I will never love you again in this life, Jason Grant. You and your so-called one true love can be stuck together forever for all I care." My daughter Nia buried her face into my shoulder, her tiny hand clutching tightly to my collar. "Mommy, are we going home with Daddy?" she asked softly. My heart ached. I kissed her forehead gently. "Nia, be good," I whispered. We're going to our new home now, a home just for Mommy and Nia. Without looking back, I held my daughter and walked straight toward the bus station. In my last life, after the divorce paperwork was done, I had nowhere to go. It was Jason who, with a condescending look, arranged for Nia and me to stay in a damp, dark utility room in the family housing block. He said, "Just deal with it for now. Once the new apartments are distributed, you can move in." And I endured it for that empty, unreachable promise. I endured the neighbors' gossip. I endured the dampness that made Nia sick. But now that I had a second chance at life, I wasn't going to be that stupid again. Just as I was lost in thought, a military jeep screeched to a halt beside me. The door flung open and Jason Grant stormed out with a darkened face, grabbing my arm. "Are you done causing a scene?" he said in a low, impatient voice. "Isn't this what you wanted? Get in the car. I'll take you home." Home? Go back where? To that cold, lifeless house that never felt like mine, or to that storage room that reeked of his charity? I shook off his hand, my gaze sharp as ice. "Watch yourself, Commander Grant," I said coldly. "We're divorced now. What right do you have to lay a hand on me?" The title, Commander Grant, made something flicker dangerously in his eyes. He clearly wasn't used to me calling him that. He was used to me softly calling him Jason. Used to my gentle tone, my blind obedience. "Emily, don't push your luck," he hissed through clenched teeth, his voice even lower now, afraid of being overheard by passers-by. "The divorce wasn't real. It was for the apartment. Did you forget?" "I didn't forget," I replied calmly, looking him dead in the eye. "But I changed my mind. I don't want the apartment, and I don't want you either. This divorce is real now. From this moment on, you walk your road and I'll walk mine." Jason stared at me in disbelief, his brows drawn so tightly together they looked locked in place. He glared at me as if trying to find a single crack in my calm expression. "You're not like this," he muttered, half to me, half to himself. The Emily he knew was obedient, passive, accommodating. She never talked back, never looked at him with this cold, distant gaze. I pulled the corner of my mouth into a bitter smile. "People change. You're the one who taught me that." His face froze, the mention of Linda Snow clearly flashing through his mind. "Mommy, I'm scared." Nia whimpered quietly in my arms, frightened by the tension. I rubbed her back gently to soothe her. "Don't be scared, baby. Mommy's here." I turned to leave again, but Jason stepped in front of me, blocking my path. His patience was clearly wearing thin. "You want to throw a tantrum? Fine, but not out here. You need to come home with me first. I'm telling you now, my ex-wife wandering the streets right after the divorce. What kind of look is that?" "Ex-wife." I corrected him immediately. "What other people think is their business. It has nothing to do with me, and more importantly, it has nothing to do with you anymore, right?" I narrowed my eyes at him. "Aren't you afraid your beloved might see this and get the wrong idea?" His face flushed, turning red, then pale. He was furious and flustered. He couldn't make sense of how I had changed so suddenly. Good. Let him be confused. Let him guess. Let him feel that helpless, lost panic I once knew too well. "Get in the car," he finally snapped, all pretense stripped away as he shouted, lunging forward to grab me. Just then a voice cut in. "Hey, isn't that Comrade Emily?" Jason and I both turned our heads at the same time. A man in a clean, short-sleeved uniform was walking toward us with a gentle smile. It was Hypenshin, the head of the neighborhood committee, a man I'd had little contact with in my previous life. But in this one he was destined to become my benefactor. Hypenshin's gaze landed on Jason's hand, gripping my arm. The warmth in his smile faded slightly. "Commander Grant, really now?" Jason flinched as if burned and immediately let go of me, his expression stiff. "It's nothing." I seized the moment and stepped closer to Shin, forcing a grateful smile. "Director Shin, what a coincidence. I was just about to come see you. My daughter and I were hoping to apply for some housing support. Would you be able to help us?" Shin paused in surprise but quickly composed himself. "Of course, that's my job. But you and Commander Grant." I lowered my eyes, allowing just the right amount of sorrow to appear on my face. "We just got divorced." His warm expression faltered. He looked at me, then at Jason, whose face had turned a steely gray, and his eyes filled with shock. As a community director, he'd seen his fair share of neighborhood drama. But a divorce involving a military commander? That was major news. Divorced? He echoed, clearly struggling to believe it. Commander Grant, you must be joking. Before I could speak, Jason jumped in with a strange smile that looked more painful than crying. Director Shun, you misunderstood. My wife, my ex-wife, she's just throwing a little tantrum. We had a small disagreement, that's all. He was still trying to keep up appearances, still clinging to the mask he always wore. He thought a single lie would smooth everything over. Jason looked at me, his eyes filled with a sharp warning, ordering me to play along. In my last life, I would have been scared by that look. I would have lowered my head, admitted fault, and obediently gone back with him, continuing to live inside the web of lies he had so carefully spun. But now, all I felt was a cold wave of disgust. I held Nia tighter and looked at Shun, my voice trembling just enough, my tone filled with quiet hurt. It's not a tantrum, Director Shun. The divorce certificate is in my pocket. We just had it stamped. I paused, then added. He thinks I'm overreacting because I wouldn't agree to move into the damp, dark storage room he arranged for me and Nia after the divorce. I lowered my voice, speaking slower. Nia is still so young and her health is fragile. I can't let her suffer like that with me. Every word was meant to strike where it hurt most. I was no longer the naive Emily, who didn't know how to fight back. I knew now that in this era, public opinion is a weapon. No matter how decorated a military officer is, if the story spreads that he abandoned his wife and child, forcing them into a moldy storage room right after a divorce, it would be enough to ruin Jason's spotless image. And as I expected, Shun's face turned serious. He was a decent man. His gaze toward Jason became sharp and clearly displeased. Commander Grant, is what Comrade Emily said true? Jason's face turned the color of liver. I had backed him into a corner. He couldn't admit it. Admitting it would destroy his reputation. But he also couldn't deny it completely because I was standing right there, a living witness. That was just temporary, he stammered, all his usual composure gone. I was going to move them once the new apartments were allocated. I let out a soft, bitter laugh. Director Shen, you might not know this, but the divorce was actually suggested by Commander Grant himself. He said it was just a fake divorce, that if we registered as a struggling single-parent household, we could get a bigger and better place. I paused meaningfully. But now that we're actually divorced, who knows who the apartment will end up with? I didn't mention Linda Snow. Not yet. It wasn't time. But I had already planted the seed of doubt. And Hypenshin wasn't a fool. He understood the hidden meaning immediately. His expression shifted from displeasure to outright contempt. Jason Grant lowered his voice, skipping even the courtesy of formality. As a soldier, how could you do something like this? You're exploiting policy loopholes. This is pure irresponsibility toward your wife and child. Jason's face turned a furious red. He was a proud man, a rising star in the military. When had he ever been publicly scolded like this under the bright light of day, with someone pointing straight at him? All he could do was glare at me with eyes that could kill. But I met his stare head-on, unafraid, a rush of bitter satisfaction swelling in my chest. Jason, this is only the beginning. The humiliation you feel right now isn't even 1/10,000th of the pain I suffered in my previous life. I turned away from him and looked back at Hypenshin, my eyes rimmed red. Director Shin, I don't want the apartment. I don't want anything from him. I just want to live peacefully with my daughter. Could you help us find somewhere to stay? Even if it's small, I'm willing to pay rent. Hypenshin sighed. The balance of sympathy had tipped completely in my favor. Comrade Emily, don't worry. This is part of my job. There happens to be a small courtyard house behind the neighborhood office that's currently unoccupied. It's not big, but it's clean and has a little yard. You and your daughter can move in for now. My heart pounded. It was even better than I'd hoped for. Thank you, Director Shen. Thank you so much. And I meant it. I was truly deeply grateful. This was no less than life-saving warmth in the middle of a blizzard. No, Jason suddenly roared, his voice filled with panic and rage. She can't go there, Emily. You're coming back with me. He had finally realized I was serious, truly leaving him, breaking free from his control in a way he never saw coming. The look in Jason's eyes wasn't just anger anymore. It was tinged with something he himself hadn't noticed, fear. The fear of losing something he thought he would always own. Pathetic. And who is he to say no? I didn't even look at him. I simply turned to Shen with sincere gratitude and said, "Thank you, Director Shen. I really appreciate all the trouble. My daughter and I are very grateful, Emily." Jason took a step forward, reaching toward me. His eyes looked like he wanted to tear me apart, but Shen immediately stepped in front of me, his face cold and stern. "Commander Grant, what do you think you're doing? Putting your hands on a divorced woman in the middle of the street?" Jason's chest was heaving, his eyes bloodshot. He glared at me, not just with anger, but with humiliation, confusion, and a trace of frantic helplessness he didn't even recognize in himself. He didn't understand. He couldn't wrap his mind around how the woman who had once treated him like her entire world, who had always followed his lead without question, had suddenly become a complete stranger. "Fine," he ground out between clenched teeth. "Remember this, Emily. Just don't regret it later." With that, Jason spun around abruptly, yanked open the car door, and practically fled into his Jeep. The engine roared to life, kicking up a thick cloud of exhaust as it sped away. Jason was gone. My hands trembled slightly as I held Nia, not from fear, but from excitement. I had won. "Don't be afraid, Comrade Emily." Shen's gentle voice brought me back to reality. "We're here. He won't dare lay a hand on you again. Come on, let me take you to the place." I nodded, then followed Hype and Shen, walking in the complete opposite direction of the military compound. The little courtyard behind the neighborhood office was even better than I had imagined. Behind a modest wooden gate lay a clean cement yard. In one corner of the yard stood a grape trellis, bare for now in the winter cold, but I could already picture it covered in lush green vines come summer. The house wasn't big. There was a main room, a small side room, and a tiny kitchen where we could build a fire and cook. Though the space was modest, it had everything we needed. Most importantly, it was quiet here. There were no whispers from the military compound, no lingering stares, and no faces that could stab me with old wounds. "This used to be the neighborhood office's storage room," Director Shin said a little sheepishly. "It was just cleared out not long ago. It's not much, but it's available. I hope you won't mind putting up with it for now." "Mind?" I replied quickly, eyes genuinely misty. "Not at all, Director Shin. This is more than I ever imagined. You've done more for us than I could ever thank you for. You're a true lifesaver." Shin waved his hand dismissively, gave a few more instructions, then left. Now it was just Nia and me in the quiet little courtyard. "Mommy, is this really our new home?" Nia peeked her head out from my arms, her eyes filled with curiosity as she took in this unfamiliar space. "Yes," I said, lowering her to the ground and crouching to meet her gaze. "Do you like it here, Nia?" She nodded enthusiastically, pointing at the bare grape trellis in the corner. "Mommy, will it grow leaves in the spring?" Something in my chest softened at her words. "Yes, baby. It'll sprout in the spring, and so will we. Our future, hers and mine, will blossom too." The first thing I did after settling in was head to the public supply store. I still had some money, enough to keep us going for a while. I bought rice, flour, and a bit indulgently a small piece of meat. Back at the courtyard, I started the fire and got to work. I was still busy cooking when a loud knock sounded at the door. Thinking it might be Director Shen, I wiped my hands and went to open it, only to find the one person I least wanted to see, Jason Grant. He'd changed into civilian clothes, but his face was just as stormy as before. In his hand, he held a mesh bag filled with fruit and canned goods. When he saw me, his lips moved like he wanted to speak, but I didn't give him the chance. "What are you doing here?" I asked coldly, standing firmly in the doorway. "Commander Grant, I thought I made myself perfectly clear earlier today." He looked taken aback by my attitude, hesitating before holding out the bag to me. "I just came to check in. You're lacking a lot here, so I brought some supplies." His voice held a stiffness he probably didn't even realize, a tone of forced generosity like he was handing down favors from on high. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "That won't be necessary," I said, staring straight at him. Nia and I don't need any of this. What we lack, you can't give us. Jason's hand froze midair, the bag still dangling from his fingers. For the first time, his handsome face was filled with genuine confusion. What do you mean? He asked cautiously. Tell me what you need. I'll buy it. He still didn't understand. He thought everything could be measured, replaced, or fixed with money and material things. I looked at him, and for a moment, I didn't even feel angry, just pity. Jason, I said quietly. What we needed was sincerity, a real home, not one built on manipulation. We needed respect for you to see me as a living, breathing person, not just a piece on your game board. With every word I spoke, the color drained further from his face. Had he ever given me any of that? No. All Jason Grant ever gave me was indifference, entitlement, and betrayal sharp enough to pierce bone. His mouth opened, Adam's apple bobbing, but no words came out. The composure that once filled his eyes, the air of command, was gone. What remained was nothing but helpless chaos. He wanted to argue, to refute me, but deep down he knew everything I'd said was true. You should take that with you, I said, gesturing to the bag. Give it to someone who actually needs it, like your dear comrade Linda Snow. The moment I said her name, Jason flinched like I had struck a nerve, his entire body tensed in pain. What nonsense are you talking about? He snapped instinctively, voice low and rough. There was guilt in his voice, thinly veiled. Nonsense, I repeated with a hollow laugh, the smile never reaching my eyes. Commander Grant, don't take everyone for a fool. This fake divorce of yours, wasn't it all a calculated scheme to legitimize her? To move her into the new government-subsidized housing meant for struggling families? I had torn through the paper-thin pretense. There was no turning back now. Jason's face turned a blotchy mix of red and pale, utterly spectacular. He must never have imagined, not even in his wildest dreams, that the plan he thought was flawless was something I'd seen straight through. How? How do you know? He murmured, stunned, his eyes wide with disbelief. How did I know? Of course I knew. I had already died once. Just then, the wooden gate of the courtyard next door creaked open, and a woman peeked out, holding a basin in her hands, her eyes fixed on us with unmistakable curiosity. It was Auntie Wong, well known on the street, both for her helpfulness and her love of gossip. The moment she saw Jason standing at my doorstep, she lit up like a moth to a flame. Oh my, isn't that Emily? She called out, glancing from me to Jason with excitement twinkling in her eyes. Jason's face turned the color of liver. He cared deeply about saving face, especially in public. He could lose his temper with me in private, but being turned into neighborhood gossip was something he couldn't tolerate. I ignored Auntie Wong completely and looked Jason straight in the eye. Please leave. My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. Otherwise, I continued, I'll happily tell every neighbor here exactly how you schemed against your own wife and child for the sake of another woman, and used a fake divorce to cheat your way into a state-subsidized apartment. It was a blatant threat. Jason's fists clenched at his side so tightly I could hear the bones strain. He stared at me like he wanted to burn me alive, but in the end he didn't dare act out. Under Auntie Wong's curious gaze, he seemed to chew his words into dust, then spun around and hurled the mesh bag to the ground. Cans and fruit tumbled everywhere. Then, without a single word or glance back, he marched away. I watched him disappear at the end of the alley before finally closing the gate, shutting out the noise of the world. I leaned back against the cold wooden door and let out a long breath. My body was tired, but my heart had never felt so light. I knew I couldn't rely on Director Shin forever. I couldn't live the rest of my life fueled by bitterness. Money would run out eventually. I had to stand on my own 2 feet. But what could I do? It was the 1980s. Opportunities were everywhere. But for a woman with a child, every opportunity came with limits and barriers. I sat on a small stool watching Nia happily playing in the courtyard, and found myself lost in thought. In my past life, I gave up everything for Jason Grant. My entire world revolved around him and our home. I became disconnected from society, from any personal ambition. Then suddenly a thought struck me. Before I died last time, I was gravely ill. I couldn't eat much, and the only thing that gave me a bit of appetite was a sweet and spicy sauce I'd figured out how to make myself. It had a tangy sweet flavor with a subtle kick. Perfect with noodles or buns. Even the nurses who took care of me couldn't stop praising it. One of them even joked that if I ever started selling it, I'd make a fortune. Selling chili sauce. The idea lit a fire in me. It was like a spark falling onto dry grass. Instant ignition. Yes, I would sell my chili sauce. It was the one thing I truly owned, the one skill that was mine and mine alone. Action is the best cure for fear. At the crack of dawn the next day, I counted every last coin I had, slipped it into my pocket, and kissed Nia, who was still asleep. I asked Auntie Wong to watch over her, and then took off, riding an old, battered bicycle into the city's biggest market. That bicycle had been part of my wedding dowry, and now it was the most valuable thing I owned. The marketplace in the 1980s was bursting with life. Shouts of vendors, the clatter of bargaining, the color and chaos of daily trade. It all came together in an unruly symphony. I wasn't there to wander aimlessly. I had a clear goal. The red chili peppers had to be thin-skinned but thick-fleshed. The purple garlic needed to be rich and pungent, and I also needed fermented soybean paste, white sugar, and spices. I didn't have much money, so every cent had to count. I bargained patiently with the vendors, saved a dime here, 5 cents there, and in the end, I used nearly all of my money to buy enough ingredients to fill 2 large baskets strapped to the back of my bike. When I got home, Auntie Wong was in the courtyard holding Nia, basking in the sun. "You're back, Emily. What are you doing with all those chilies?" she asked, curiosity lighting up her face. I smiled. "Just making a little sauce for myself." I didn't say more until I had real results. Any bold words would sound hollow. I washed my hands clean and began scrubbing each bright red chili, laying them out to dry. Then I peeled the garlic, crushed it together with the chilies in a stone mortar. It was hard physical work, but I didn't feel tired at all. My heart felt more grounded and peaceful than ever. In my past life, my hands had been used for nothing more than cooking, cleaning, and serving a man. In this life, these hands would create a future for myself and for my daughter. The red chili mash, the crushed purple garlic, and the dark soybean paste began to blend together in my mixing bowl. I lit the stove and simmered the mixture slowly. Before long, a rich, complex aroma, sweet, tangy, spicy, drifted out from my little kitchen and filled the entire courtyard. Even Nia, who had been playing quietly, couldn't resist running over. She clung to the door frame and sniffed hard with her tiny nose. "Mommy, it smells so good." I smiled, scooped a little with a spoon, blew on it to cool, and held it out to her. Nia gave it a careful lick, and her eyes immediately lit up. "Yummy, Mommy. Sweet and spicy." I knew then I had succeeded. Just then, someone knocked on the gate again. It was Auntie Wong, clearly lured in by the smell. "Emily, what is that? It smells incredible. Half the alley's talking about it," she said, peeking in with wide eyes full of curiosity. I didn't hesitate. I scooped a little into a small bowl and handed it to her. "It's my homemade chili sauce. Try it. Tell me what you think." She looked skeptical at first, but after one taste her eyes popped open. "Oh my lord, Emily, this is amazing. Better than anything they sell at the public store. Seriously delicious." She showered me with praise, then suddenly leaned in, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. "By the way, I heard something today while I was out shopping. Thought I should let you know people were gossiping about your ex. Sounds like Commander Grant isn't doing so well in the unit lately." My heart tensed. "What did they say?" "They said he's gotten too close to that Linda Snow from the performance troupe, and someone reported him. You know how strict the army is about conduct. He might really be in trouble this time." Her tone carried a hint of shock and fear. My hand, still holding the spatula, paused for a second. So karma had already come knocking. In my last life, Jason Grant and Linda's affair wasn't exposed until a year after our divorce. By then, he'd already covered his tracks, so the fallout wasn't serious. But now, because of my rebirth, the fire had started earlier than he could have prepared for. Auntie Wong continued mumbling to herself. "What a fool, giving up such a good wife like you for someone like her." I didn't respond. I simply turned back to the pot, and carefully ladled the finished chili sauce into the clean glass jars I had prepared. The vibrant red sauce shimmered under the sunlight, rich and full of promise. Whatever happened to Jason was his business. What I needed to focus on now was my own life. As Auntie Wong left, she insisted on paying me 50 cents for a small bowl of the sauce, saying she wanted to bring it home for her husband to enjoy with his liquor. Holding the warm, crinkled bill between my fingers, I looked at the neatly lined up jars of chili sauce and felt a bolder, more ambitious plan begin to take shape in my mind. Waiting for customers to come to me wasn't a long-term solution. I had to take the initiative. Tomorrow I would go to the state-run cotton mill bathhouse on the east side of the city. That's where the most female workers gathered after their shifts, and they had strong purchasing power. My first real earnings had to start there. The bathhouse was the heart of the city. Thousands of workers labored nearby. When the workday ended and the factory bell rang in the evening, crowds surged out like a tidal wave. It was a spectacular sight. That would be my first battleground. The next afternoon, I steamed a huge pot of fluffy white buns ahead of time. I carefully wrapped over a dozen bottles of chili sauce in cloth and packed them into my bicycle basket. On the other side, I hung the still warm buns. Then I climbed onto my old bike and rode into the wind. There was still an hour before the end of the workday, but the factory gate was already lively. Vendors were everywhere, selling sunflower seeds and peanuts, old women hawking popsicles, peddlers with needles and thread, each claiming the best spots. I was a newcomer, and homemade sauce was an oddity. No one paid me any attention. I found an unremarkable corner, laid out a cloth, and carefully arranged my glistening chili sauce bottles in neat rows. Then I brought out my secret weapon, the steamed buns. I tore one into small pieces, stuck them on toothpicks, and dabbed each with a bit of my bright red, mouth-watering chili sauce. I didn't shout like the others. I simply stood quietly behind my little stall. I believed that good flavor could speak for itself. Time ticked by. Finally, the end-of-day bell rang. The crowd surged out like a floodgate had opened. Everyone looked busy and hurried, eager to get home. Some glanced my way with curiosity, but no one stopped. My heart began to sink. Had I oversimplified things? Just as I was about to give up, 3 women in factory uniforms walked by, chatting and laughing. One of them caught sight of my sauce and slowed down. "Ha! What's this? Looks fiery and kind of pretty," she said. She paused. Opportunity. I immediately flashed my warmest smile and picked up one of the bun samples. "Ma'am, this is sweet and spicy sauce I made myself. Just give it a try. It's free." Her friend tugged on her arm. "Don't eat random stuff. Who knows if it's clean?" The woman hesitated. I jumped in. "Ma'am, look. These jars have been scalded with boiling water multiple times. It's all clean. I promise. Just one small bite. If you don't like it, I won't pressure you." I looked her in the eye, honest and calm. Finally, she was convinced. She took a bite and her eyes lit up immediately. "Wow, this is good," she exclaimed in surprise. "Sweet and sour at first, then a little spicy at the end. It really wakes up your appetite." She turned to her friends. "You guys have to try this. It's honestly great." Once someone broke the ice, the other 2 women let down their guard and each picked up a piece. "Oh wow, this is good," one of them said. "This would be amazing with noodles." The first woman clapped her hands. "Young lady, how much for a bottle?" "The jars are full and the ingredients are real. 1 yuan per bottle," I said confidently. It wasn't cheap, but my costs were real and the quality spoke for itself. "I'll take 1, she said without hesitation, pulling out a crisp 1 yuan bill from her pocket. My first real sale. That one transaction lit the fuse. People who had been watching from the sidelines now stepped forward, drawn in by the scent and the crowd. "Let me try. How long does it last? Can you give me a little discount?" In an instant, my little stall was surrounded. I moved quickly, handing out samples, answering questions, staying calm and focused. Even as the excitement swelled around me. "It's totally safe. Don't worry. Everything's clean, made with high-quality ingredients. It can last 10 days, even half a month without spoiling," I explained. "But can't you lower the price a little?" one woman asked. "This looks like hard-earned money." "I can't. I said firmly but politely. This is honest work and every jar took real effort to make. In less than 15 minutes, all the bottles of chili sauce I brought were sold out. I stood there counting the warm, crumpled bills in my hands. Small notes, coins, nothing fancy, but every one of them burning hot with significance. 13 yuan and 50 cents in total. After subtracting costs, I had nearly 8 yuan in profit. 8 yuan. In a time when the average worker's monthly wage was 30 or 40 yuan, that was a fortune. My hands trembled with excitement. I had done it. I had really done it. I could support Nia on my own. I carefully stashed the money away and began packing up my things, ready to head home when a sharp, mocking voice rang out behind me. Well, look who it is. Isn't this our dear Commander Grant's wife? What happened? Did he dump you? Ended up hawking goods on the street, huh? I spun around. Not far away stood Linda Snow, arm in arm with a man I didn't recognize, staring at me with a face full of disdain and smug satisfaction. Her voice was shrill and cruel. If this were my past life, I would have frozen in shame, red with humiliation, wishing I could disappear. But not this time. This time, I simply straightened up, patted the dust off my hands, and looked at her calmly with even a trace of a smile at the corner of my lips. Comrade Snow, I said. You've made 2 mistakes. Linda's grin faltered for a second, clearly surprised by how composed I was. 1, I said, holding up a finger, my voice loud and clear for all nearby to hear. I'm not Commander Grant's wife. We're divorced. My name is Emily. I emphasized the word divorced. Gasps rippled through the remaining crowd. A military commander's divorce. That was headline material in any alleyway. Linda's expression twisted. 2, I said, lowering my hand and shifting my gaze to the man beside her. He had greasy hair, a slick face and shifty eyes. Clearly not someone respectable. I make my own money with my own 2 hands. I support my daughter honestly. That's not what I call a downfall. It's what I call ability. I paused slightly, then went on, voice calm but colder now. And that's a lot more honorable than scheming for something that was never yours to begin with. My words were deliberate, pointed. Linda's face turned the color of liver in an instant. She hadn't expected that the same Emily, who used to be timid and obedient, too afraid to even speak up, was now articulate, composed, and sharp as a blade. She wanted to fight back, but found no words because everything I'd said was true. The expressions of the onlookers around us shifted, pity and contempt clearly divided, and none of it was on my side. You. Linda was shaking all over. She pointed at me, but nothing came out of her mouth. I didn't even bother looking at her. I turned my gaze to the man at her side and asked, deliberately curious, Comrade Snow, aren't you always by Commander Grant's side? Who's this fine gentleman here? Aren't you going to introduce him to everyone? Shut your mouth. Linda screeched like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. She was flustered, completely unraveling. She hadn't come here for a confrontation. She came to enjoy my misery, to watch me beg and suffer after being abandoned. I didn't know what exactly had happened between her and Jason Grant, but judging by her panic, it was clear she didn't want Jason knowing about this new friend. That was all I needed to know. I didn't have to destroy her. I just had to make sure she stayed uncomfortable, too. You'll regret this, Emily, Linda hissed, then yanked the man beside her and slinked into the crowd, fleeing in humiliation. Her retreat couldn't have looked more pathetic. Watching her scurry away, my heart swelled with satisfaction. At that moment, the woman who had bought my chili sauce earlier came over and glanced disdainfully in Linda's direction. She scoffed. What a mess. Look at her. So much trash and not even clean. Bold of her to talk about you like that. One of the women muttered under her breath. Ignore her, Emily. We're with you. That sauce is amazing. Are you coming back to sell here tomorrow? Yeah, another chimed in. Well, tell all the girls in the workshop. We'll definitely come by more. A few others nodded in agreement. Their voices, simple and sincere, warmed me more than I could have imagined. Thank you, I said earnestly. Thank you all. I'll be back tomorrow. I meant every word. Their genuine kindness was more precious to me than anything money could buy. I packed up my things, climbed on my bicycle, and rode toward home. The setting sun stretched my shadow long across the road, and for the first time in a long while, the road home felt steady, solid under my feet. But as I turned into the narrow alley leading to our courtyard, my heart sank. A familiar military jeep was parked at the entrance, and standing next to it was the one person I least wanted to see, Jason Grant. What was he doing here? Why now? My heart shot up into my throat. My bicycle suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I squeezed the brake, bringing the bike to a slow stop just a few meters away from him. Between us hung the fading amber light of dusk, dim, uncertain. Jason didn't move. He just stood there watching me. His gaze wasn't filled with the same anger or judgment I'd seen before. This time it was something more complicated. Fatigue, frustration, and something else I couldn't quite place. He was the first to break the silence. "You went to the cotton mill market," he said, his voice rasping low and dry. I stiffened. How does he know that? I didn't answer his question. Instead, I countered with a cold, flat tone. "Did you wait here just to ask me that, Commander Grant?" "Answer me," he said, his voice hard with authority, like he still expected to be obeyed without question. I smiled, sharp and unapologetic. "Yes, I did. I went to sell my chili sauce to earn money and take care of my daughter. Do you have any orders for me now, Commander Grant?" I expected him to snap, to scold me again for embarrassing him, for tarnishing his image. But he didn't. Jason just stared at me in silence for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a cigarette, lit it, and took a long drag. Smoke curled around him, making his expression even harder to read. Finally, he spoke again, voice low and hoarse. "Emily, someone reported me and Linda." He said it out loud. I already knew, but hearing it from his own mouth still sent a strange cold wave through my chest. He looked at me, his eyes trying to read mine. "It was an anonymous report," he said. "But the timing, it came right after the divorce. Do you know who did it?" He was suspicious of me. I met his gaze directly, no hesitation. "I don't. Maybe it was someone who couldn't stand watching you two flaunt your relationship," I said coolly. Jason stared hard, trying to figure out whether I was lying, but I was too calm, too matter-of-fact. He couldn't find anything on my face. He crushed the cigarette underfoot and stepped toward me. That heavy scent of smoke mixed with the sharp coldness that always clung to him hit me all at once. Instinctively, I took half a step back, tightening my grip on the handlebars. "Emily, you have to help me," he said as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I froze, thinking I must have misheard. "Help you?" I blinked, stunned. "You want me to help you?" "It's serious," he said, his tone dark with urgency. "They've already talked to me. If this doesn't get resolved properly, my career's over." "So what?" I snapped, eyes narrowing. "What does your career have to do with me?" Jason's face flushed red, completely caught off guard by my bluntness. "Emily, we were husband and wife. Do you really have to be this heartless?" Jason said, "Husband and wife." I laughed aloud. Only this time, my laugh carried tears and a deep, cutting sarcasm. "Jason Grant, when you forced me into a fake divorce for the sake of Linda Snow, did you remember we were husband and wife? When you threw Nia and me into that dark, damp storage room like trash, did you think about our marriage? And now that your future's at stake, suddenly you remember we were husband and wife." Jason was left speechless, his face shifting from red to pale, then back again. "I need you," he finally said through clenched teeth, like it was the hardest thing in the world to admit. Then came the real reason he was here, ridiculous and shameless. "I need you to talk to the party committee. Tell them the divorce was a moment of impulsiveness, that we're planning to reconcile. If you say that, they'll believe the report was nonsense. They'll clear me." I stood there quietly listening to him say the most selfish, shameless words I'd ever heard. And in that moment, everything finally became crystal clear. To Jason, I had never been a person. I was a tool. Once I was a tool to help him maintain his perfect image. Now I was just a tool to help him survive a scandal. And the moment that last sliver of hope inside me completely died, I felt strangely calm. I looked him straight in the eye and said slowly and clearly, "Jason Grant, listen to me carefully. First, I will not help you. Whether your career survives or burns is none of my concern. Second, there is no possibility of us getting back together. Let go of that fantasy. Third, if you come and bother me again, I won't hesitate to go to the committee myself and confirm every word of that report. Without another glance at his stunned, contorted face, I pushed hard on the bike pedal and rode past him fast and steady. This time I didn't look back. All I heard was a deep, suppressed growl, like an animal driven into a corner. It was full of rage and unwillingness, but buried deep beneath it was something Jason Grant had probably never felt before. Regret. Too late. When I got back to the little courtyard and slid the bolt across the gate, I felt like every ounce of strength had drained from my body. I leaned back against the wooden door, my back cold against the surface, but my heart pounding fiercely in my chest. I kept replaying the image of Jason's shocked, humiliated, and finally desperate face. But there was no joy in it, only an eerie, absolute calm. The man I once loved so deeply, the one I had looked up to for half my life. In the end, he was nothing special, just a sad, pathetic joke. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years. The next morning, I didn't waste another thought on Jason Grant. His world was crumbling. Mine had only just begun. I carefully spread the money I made yesterday across the table. Each worn, crumpled bill was a medal, proof of my independence. I didn't put it away. I didn't save it because the best investment is in yourself. I went back to the market. This time, I bought 3 times the ingredients I'd bought the day before. I even gritted my teeth and bought a bigger pot and 50 brand new glass jars. I also treated myself to a new piece of cloth, planning to make a small sign. Just 3 characters. Emily's sauce. Simple, clear, mine a new beginning. The process of making the sauce was still exhausting, but as I watched the vibrant red mixture bubble and boil, as the aroma filled the courtyard, I felt stronger than ever. That afternoon, I returned to the cotton mill gate. This time, the scene was completely different. Before I could even finish setting up, the woman who had bought from me yesterday came running over, beaming, followed by 7 or 8 other women. "Emily, thank goodness you're here. We've been waiting for you," she laughed. "That sauce I took home yesterday. My husband ate 3 bowls of noodles with it. Quick, give me 2 bottles. And my mom wants 1 too." I didn't even have time to hand out bun samples. The crowd swarmed the stall, and all 50 jars of sauce were surrounded before I could blink. "Everyone, please. Don't worry. There's plenty," I said, scrambling to keep up. I was overwhelmed, but in the best way. I hadn't expected happiness to arrive so fast or so fiercely. In less than 30 minutes, every single jar I brought was sold out again. My hands were trembling even more than yesterday as I counted the money, over 50 yuan. That was almost half a month's salary for Jason Grant. My eyes burned with emotion as I stared at the small fortune in my hands. So it was true. I really could live well on my own. "Excuse me, young lady. Please wait a moment." Just as I was about to pack up, a middle-aged man in a cadre's uniform walked over with a smile. Behind him stood 2 people in white coats. They looked like they were from a cafeteria. "Yes," I asked, a bit confused. "I'm the chairman of our factory's workers' union. My last name is Lee," he said cheerfully. "I heard from the cafeteria staff that your chili sauce has been really popular among the workers." I gave a modest smile. "It's just a little recipe I came up with myself. Everyone's being generous. If something this simple can win over so many people, that's real talent," Chairman Lee said, his gaze full of appreciation. Then he got straight to the point. "Emily, I came here today to discuss a potential collaboration." "A collaboration?" I froze for a moment. "Yes." He gestured toward the cafeteria manager behind him. "Our factory cafeteria serves several thousand people every day. We'd like to discuss placing a long-term order for your sauce to be used as a table condiment." My brain buzzed like a meat pie had suddenly fallen from the sky and hit me on the head. Getting into the cotton factory cafeteria meant a stable, large volume order. It meant Emily's sauce would land on a platform I never even dared to dream of. "Of course, we'd make sure you're compensated fairly," Chairman Lee continued. "We'd sign a formal supply contract. The price can stay the same as your retail rate today. What do you think?" My heart pounded wildly. Right in front of me lay a golden road. But with it came enormous pressure. Supplying for thousands of people. That tiny pot, and my little courtyard wouldn't be nearly enough. I'd need a bigger space, more hands, a proper production setup. Could I really do it? I knew this was the most important crossroads in my life. I could step back and keep running my little stall, living a quiet life. Or I could move forward into a bigger, brighter, riskier world. Clutching the still warm bills in my hand, I took a deep breath, looked up, and said, "Chairman Lee, thank you for believing in me. I'll take the deal." A smile of approval lit up his face. He reached out a hand. "Emily, I look forward to working with you on behalf of the cotton factory. Welcome aboard." I shook his hand firmly. "Pleasure to work with you." On the way home, my heart was a mix of fire and sea. Fire for the joy of success and hope for the future. Calm for the sobering calm that followed. This order from the cotton factory. It was a dream come true, but also a massive weight. With just my little courtyard and one pot, I wouldn't be able to keep up with the demand even if I worked day and night. I needed a bigger place, a real workshop. But where would I find one? After thinking it over, one name surfaced in my mind. Mr. Shan Shun, the director. He had been my benefactor, the only person in the city who had the means and willingness to help me. The next day, I brought 2 of my best labeled sauce bottles and knocked on the office door of the neighborhood committee. When I explained why I had come and told him about the contract I signed with the cotton factory, Director Shin was stunned. His jaw practically hit the floor. He stared at me, his eyes full of amazement and genuine pride. "Emily, you've truly surprised me," he said with heartfelt admiration. "You've got guts and talent." He paced a few steps in the office, cigarette in hand, then slapped his thigh. "Actually, there is a place." Director Shen explained that the committee owned an old abandoned soy sauce and vinegar factory out back. It had been empty for years. The space was big and several of the large cooking stoves were still in decent condition. It would need serious cleaning, but it had potential. "Don't worry about the rent," he added, pounding his chest. "I'll get you the lowest rate possible." My heart pounded wildly with excitement. This place was practically tailored for me. Under Director Shun's guidance, we arrived at the old soy sauce and vinegar factory. The yard was even bigger than I had imagined, and even more rundown. The weeds were taller than a person, and moss crept up every inch of the walls. But those massive cooking stoves still standing in the back made my eyes light up. If I could get this place cleaned and running, my production could increase at least tenfold. "What do you think?" Director Shin asked. "It's perfect," I said, barely able to contain my excitement. "This is it," Director Shin said. As I was already planning how to clear the yard, an all-too-familiar voice rang out behind me. "Emily." Even if that voice turned to ash, I'd still recognize it. I whipped around. Jason Grant was standing at the gate. We hadn't seen each other in just a few days. But he looked like a completely different man. Stubble shadowed his chin, his military uniform no longer sharp and commanding, but loose and weary. He looked thinner, more haggard. His eyes were sunken, bloodshot. Jason looked around the broken-down courtyard, his gaze sweeping over the crumbling walls, then landing on my face, still flushed with excitement. "You're really going to make your sauce here?" he asked. His tone had a slight edge, sharp, almost bitter, though I doubt he realized it himself. He probably couldn't imagine that the woman who used to revolve around him was now building something new from the ruins. I didn't want to deal with him. I turned to Director Shun. "Shall we go take care of the paperwork?" "Wait," Jason called after me, stepping forward to stand in front of me. Director Shin gave him a guarded look and instinctively moved as if to shield me. "I heard about the contract with the cotton factory." Jason's expression was a complex swirl of shock, bitterness, and something I couldn't quite name. "You've done well." The belated, dry compliment didn't stir a single ripple in my heart. "I also heard. You're short on help," he continued, forcing a tight smile that bordered on pathetic. "I can assist. I can connect you with some of my retired comrades. They're all strong, dependable workers." I stared at him silently, studying the once imperious man now standing before me with an unfamiliar humility, trying to bridge the chasm that had long since become impassable. But it was too late. "No need." I cut him off coolly. "This is business. And in business, I have no room for someone like you, Captain Grant. My operation is just starting. Small but clean. I don't want or need any part of it stained. Jason's face drained of color instantly, pale beneath the red tinge of humiliation. 2 years later, Director Jiang, the supply co-op in the south, has doubled their order again. Our production is struggling to keep up. Director Jiang, a reporter from the local paper, is here. They want to do a feature on Emily's sauce. I stood in my bright, spacious office, watching through the large window as workers in crisp white uniforms bustled efficiently along the modern production line. The air was filled with the sweet, spicy aroma of my signature sauce, a scent that had become my comfort, my strength. Emily's sauce had grown from a tiny street stall into a local brand with real recognition. We now had our own factory, dozens of employees, and our products were being shipped to several nearby cities. Mommy Nan, her pigtails bouncing, came running in like a little butterfly and flung herself into my arms. She was taller, chubbier, her cheeks rosy, and her smile as bright as ever. I held her tightly, gazing out the window at everything I'd built with my own 2 hands. For the first time in years, I felt a peaceful calm settle in my heart. I had been so busy over the past 2 years, I barely had time to think about the past. Jason Grant's name hadn't even crossed my mind in ages. I'd heard he'd eventually been disciplined by the military, demoted, and transferred to some remote location. As for Linda Snow, she'd married a businessman from Hong Kong soon after Jason's downfall, and disappeared from public view. Their world had nothing to do with mine anymore until that afternoon. I was just about to finish work when my secretary knocked and entered with a strange look on her face. Director Jiang, there's a man outside. His name is Grant. He says he's an old acquaintance of yours. My heart skipped a beat. I walked to the factory gate. In the light of the setting sun, a man stood there, his figure lonely and weathered. He wore a faded blue work uniform, and his cloth shoes were covered in dust. When he turned around, I saw a face carved deep with the marks of time and hardship. It was Jason Grant. He was no longer the lofty officer I once knew, just an ordinary middle-aged man. He looked at me, and his eyes were filled with remorse and sorrow that could not be erased. I came back, Jason said hoarsely. I just wanted to see you and Nan. We're doing well, I replied lightly. My tone was polite but distant. Jason gave a smile that looked more painful than crying. Emily, I've heard everything. You're 100 times, no, 1,000 times more capable than I ever imagined. His eyes turned red as he looked at me. I'm sorry. The words came out heavy and far too late. Emily, I was a fool back then, completely blind. I threw away the most precious thing in my life with my own hands. His voice choked. A man in his 40s standing before me crying like a child. I regret it, Emily. I've regretted it every single day for the past 2 years. I've missed you to the point of madness. I miss Nan so much it hurts. I even went to find Linda. I slapped her. Not because she lied to me, but because she made me realize just how low I had become. Emily, please forgive me. Let's get back together. I don't want anything else. I'll be your servant, your doorman, whatever you want. Just let me stay by your side, please. He was begging so desperately, and the scene felt so familiar. Only now our roles had completely reversed. I looked at him quietly. I felt no hatred, no love, not even pity. The man in front of me felt like a stranger. Jason, I said calmly. I've heard your apology. A flicker of hope lit in his eyes. But it's too late, I continued. And that flicker extinguished instantly. I don't need anyone to be my servant. I don't need anyone guarding my door. My factory has security. My home has me and Nan. That's enough. I pointed not far away where Director Shin was holding Nan's hand, chatting happily with her. Both of them were laughing. Director Shin is now a consultant at my factory. He's also like family to Nan, her dearest grandpa Shin. As you can see, we're doing just fine. In fact, we're doing better without you. As for forgiveness, I shook my head. I haven't forgiven you. I've just let go of myself. I no longer hated him because he simply wasn't worth the energy anymore. Then I turned away, walking toward the warm sunset, toward my daughter and toward our future without ever looking back. Go back.